On this issue of genocide, do you accept, though, that Hamas's whole raison d'etre when it comes to Israel is genocide? They want to eradicate Israel and kill as many Jews as they can. I mean, they've made no secret of this.
Yeah, so this is really important. So I have no sympathy for Hamas. So I'm not interested in defending Hamas. I think that's nothing but a distraction. Because right now they're not fighting Hamas. They're just killing Palestinian civilians.
Well, they're also killing Hamas terrorists. They are. I mean, they're killing thousands of them.
Barely. No, wait a minute. Barely. But let's go to your main point, okay? So the main point is, well, Hamas threatens X, Y, and Z and has killed 1,200 people on October 7th. So that is why we have to all worry about what Hamas might do in regards to trying to... Hold on, let me finish the point. Let me finish the point. At what they might do if they had infinite power, the kind of power that Israel has. Meanwhile, Israel is actually doing the genocide, is actually preventing a Palestinian state and saying you are not allowed to exist, and if you dare try to exist, we'll kill 20,000 of your children and women.
All right, Douglas, respond to that.
Several things. First of all, anyone who uses the term genocide in this context simply doesn't know what they're talking about or is a malevolent actor. I don't know if Mr. Uyghur's travelled at all in his life, how far he's travelled, how many conflicts he's seen, but I'd have guessed none. And you clearly know nothing about this particular conflict, and you've obviously seen none of it. The genocide that you describe is such a smear and a libel against the Jewish state. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, I'm sure it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't remotely want to. And people like you and other pro-Palestinian propagandists have spent years claiming that Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza. By the way, the weirdest thing about this claim is that the population of the Gaza has grown by 1 million in the last 15 or so years. So if Israel was trying to carry out a genocide, it's either the worst perpetrator of genocide ever or uniquely poor at performing that task. None of the stats support that ridiculous claim. And it's such a weird smear and a libel of Israel. Secondly, of course, you've just rattled off Hamas figures, as everyone of your kind always does. Thirdly, you said that the world cried. You said that the people like you who cover for the Palestinian extremists. Thirdly, you said that the world cried out for the 36 Israeli dead children. No, they didn't. And you know that very well. You know that very well. If you put up a poster to a missing dog in any Western city, that poster stays up. In city after city in America, posters of abducted Jewish children, including a 10-month-old baby, were put up and were ripped down by people who have been indoctrinated into hate of Jews. Nobody would rip down the poster of a missing dog, but from Dublin to Berkeley, they ripped down posters of abducted Jewish children. So no, I don't think there was
Douglas,
very much care for that around the world.
Let me put this to you, Douglas.
Let me make two other very quick points. Firstly, you said what Hamas might do, as if it was some kind of hypothetical. Hamas showed what they do, what they want to do. It showed it on October the 7th, and its leadership, as I'm sure you very well know, said that they would like to repeat that again and again until they have got rid of every Jew. So, I don't know. I would trust Hamas's word on that rather than your interpretation of what you think they mean when they say that, and your generous interpretation of what you think that means. And finally, as for preventing a Palestinian state, it is nonsense that the Israelis have prevented a Palestinian state. They gave the Gazans a Palestinian state in 2005. They gave them a Palestinian state in 2005 when every Jewish person was ripped from their homes in the Gaza by IDF soldiers. And the Palestinian people were given a state. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas, who then killed their fellow Palestinians, never had another election, and used all the billions of dollars of taxpayer funds from the US, UK, and Europe to build terror tunnels and to enrich themselves so they could live the life of luxury in Qatar. Again and again, the reason there is not a Palestinian state is because the Palestinian leadership doesn't want one.
Okay, Douglas,
didn't want one in 1947, it preferred war, and it doesn't want one now.
Douglas, let me put one point to you raised by Queen Rania of Jordan in a new piece for, I think it was the Washington Post. In just over 2 months, she said Israel's turned Gaza into a hellscape. At least 8,000 children have died, more than the death tolls of Pearl Harbor, September the 11th, and Hurricane Katrina combined. These are gigantic and horrendous numbers of children being killed. Do you not have any qualms about the number of children being killed? I mean, does it not suggest that Israel...
I want to hear Queen Rania talking about this as much as I want to hear Queen Camilla or Meghan Markle. I mean, it's pathetic. Queen Rania is holding on to her own position in Jordan. The only piece of advice she has for anyone is how to marry a king. Queen Rania herself is just playing a very nasty political game. If she cared at all, and I would pose this to all the states in the region, if Jordan cared at all for the Palestinian people, they would take them in. They would take them in. They don't want them. If the Egyptians wanted them, they'd take them in, but they don't. Do you know why? Because every country that takes in the Palestinians gets terror. It happened in Egypt, it happened in Jordan, it happened in Syria, it happened in Lebanon, it happened in Tunisia, on and on. That's why these people don't really care about their fellow Muslims. They just care about hating Jews.
All right, Cenk, your response.
Yeah, so you asked if he cared about 8,000 dead babies, and his answer was no. Queen Rania bothers me, so complete non-answer, because he doesn't care. He doesn't think that Palestinians' lives are worth anything. He just called them all terrorists.
Well, it's nice you can put that word
and this is what they always do.
There you go.
So hold on, I let you talk for a long time, so why don't you shut up for a second? So we've got all of these dead babies. We've got all of these dead babies that this monster doesn't care about. He says keep bombing them. A former intelligence officer said in the Israeli press they're using AI in a program called The Gospel, where he said it's basically a mass assassination factory. And we could all see it with our own eyes. And you can do all the propaganda you want. No one believes your nonsense. We see all the dead women. We see all the dead children. Now Israel has killed 20 times the number of civilians that Hamas killed. So would I want Hamas in charge of Israel? Never, never. I don't trust them, and I don't believe that they would be benign. So all of this propaganda about, people don't mind Hamas. No, we mind Hamas. We terribly what happened on October 7th. And I've now shown you different Israelis that have said that it's a problem. And I want peace and security for both Israel and Palestine. And this does not get Israel any peace or security. But when you ask the other side, do you mind tens of thousands of civilians that have been murdered, incinerated alive, body parts picked out of rubble, little babies killed over and over again in what is even the Israeli prime minister is referring to as Amalek, meaning an extermination of the Palestinian people. And I must clarify the difference between a genocide and a Holocaust. A genocide is when you target a specific people and kill a lot of civilians. Srebrenica, where 6,000 people were killed, was considered a genocide. So it doesn't mean you try to murder every single person in that
Cenk, let me ask
race.
you.
That is a Holocaust.
Let me reply. Wait, one second. Before I go to Douglas, Cenk, one question. You want to get rid of Hamas too, as does Douglas, as do I. If you don't do it the way that Israel is currently doing it, given that they live amongst the population, how else do you do it?
Yeah, there's an excellent way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. So let me explain. So war, this guy talks about, I love war. I go to all the conflict zones. So by watching it and rooting on for more death, I know something about conflict. You know nothing. So here's what reality is. War gets you more war, but peace actually works. So when Israel did a peace deal with Egypt, not only were the Egyptians safe, but the Israelis became safer. That peace deal has held for decade after decade. So how do you do a peace deal in this case? What you do is you do the two-state solution now, and you do it with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And if you then have a Palestinian state, the Palestinian Authority would have the credibility to drive out Hamas from Gaza. That is a realistic plan for both peace, security for Israel and the Palestinians, and driving out Hamas. The idea that you're going to kill 20,000 more civilians, 200,000 more civilians in Gaza, and it's going to drive out Hamas.
Let Douglas
answer that.
Let Douglas respond to that.
First of all, I mean, your other guest, I mean, I don't know what kind of a creature he is. He's a kind of low-grade thug, as far as I can see. He's listened to nothing I've said.
Yeah, I know, because
You
I'm Muslim. That's what you call all Muslims.
I'll tell you. No, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. I just think that I think you're just a very low-rent racist. But anyway, let me just get on to it. You say, first of all, I don't care about the death of Palestinian children. Yes, I do care. I care very deeply about it. But I also know that the responsibility for their deaths lies on Hamas, which has misgoverned their society for the last 16 years and now has been leading the country into being in a war with Israel. So yes, it's on Hamas, this. As for seeing wars, by the way, I just mentioned about seeing wars because as far as I can see, you're very ill-travelled as well as rather ill-lettered and ill-spoken. And I mention that I cover wars and go to wars because I happen to think myself that it's worth seeing things with your own eyes, including things that you don't particularly like, but you report the truth. I don't know if you ever even leave your own bedroom. And I can tell already that you don't because you've already said something that demonstrates you know nothing about this conflict. You have just demonstrated it in the following terms. You said that this is why we need to push for a two-state solution and give legitimacy to the Palestinian Authority. I'll tell you something you don't know because I guess you spent no time in the West Bank, have you? I'll tell you something you probably don't know. The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, celebrated the 7th of October massacres. I'll give you another fact which demonstrates you know nothing about this and clearly haven't ever visited any Palestinians in the West Bank as I have. If there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, the reason why there isn't one is because if there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, Hamas would win. So your idea of a two-state solution, I'm afraid you are so out of date and you really should leave your bedroom because in this region, nobody thinks that there is a two-state solution on the table because there is not a viable negotiating partner. But I just want to make one other main point. You have gone on and on tonight, throwing accusations out against the Jewish state, against me. It's the sort of thing you do. I know you're a sort of online pugilist and think you can run for office, and good luck with that. But I'd just like to point out that you only really get animated if the Jews are involved. And I can tell that for the following reason. I mean, your surname's Uyghur, isn't it? 1 million Uyghur Muslims in China have been put in concentration camps in the last decade. And people of your ilk never really care about that, do you? Because it's not the Jews doing it, it's the Chinese Communist Party. At the moment, 1 million people who are in Pakistan at the moment, who are your fellow Muslims and who happen to be Afghan, and I don't think you care about them, do you? 1 million Afghans are currently being forcibly deported from Pakistan to Afghanistan. You don't care about that. You're not riled up about that. You're not riled up about what the Janjaweed are currently doing in Sudan, where thousands and thousands of people are being attacked by the Islamist militia there. You don't care about any of that. You get exercised and you rile up what little base you have of malcontents because you're riled up when the Jews do anything.
All right,
it's
Cenk.
perfectly obvious.
Okay, Cenk, your response.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, my last name is Uygur. We're named after the Uyghur Turks in China. And have we talked about that on the Young Turks?
I thought you'd spoken up then.
Yes. Yes, we've talked about it endlessly, but you don't know that, and you don't watch the show.
Shame nobody watches your show.
So,
nobody does watch your show.
Yeah, well, okay, again, you're interrupting me when I was kind enough to let you go on with your mad ramblings. So how nobody watches the show, we have 5 billion views a year. I don't know what piddling outfit you're on, or what little Substack or whatever the hell you write on. So the reason we're incredibly popular is we fight for all. We fight for shut up. We fight for all innocent civilians. So yes, we've covered all of those conflicts. Yes, I'm against fundamentalist Islam, no question about it. I'm against fundamentalist religions of all kind. In terms of every right-wing supporter of Israel, their only tactic is, hey, don't look at the 8,000 murdered children. Don't look at the 6,400 murdered women. Don't look at the fact that all the hospitals in northern Gaza have been shut down. Don't look at the fact that 4 out of 5 people in northern Gaza are starving right now, and half of the people in southern Gaza are starving. Instead, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. Now, wait a minute. I just told you how much I want peace and security for Israel, how much I hated what happened on October 7th. What you don't know is I started the Young Turks with 2 Jewish friends. And so the whole program is both Jews and Muslims. You know nothing. You know nothing. I have Jewish family and friends. Why in the world, God, as they go to Israel, I want them to be safe, okay? So I have shown empathy for all civilians throughout everything I have ever done. But all you have is hatred. Oh, he's an anti-Semite. Kill the Muslims. Kill the Palestinians. And once we kill them, by the way, we'll blame them for it. Israel had to murder all those babies in Palestine because Hamas made us do it. Then why are you listening to Hamas? Why are you letting Hamas drive your agenda? Well, you don't have to kill those civilians. It's a mass assassination factory.
We are, 9 weeks into this war. 20,000 people, according to the Hamas-run health authority, but the numbers have not been questioned by other official bodies. 20,000 people so far have died on the Palestinian side. And it is estimated from the IDF that they say they've killed 7,000 or so Hamas terrorists. That number's not been verified. But if you take that as being accurate, that's 20% of the estimated number of Hamas terrorists that exist. Therefore, there's 80% still to be eliminated, which at this rate would take another 8 to 10 months and would lead to potentially several 100,000 civilians being killed and pretty much all of Gaza being obliterated with nowhere for the 2 million who've been displaced to go back to. So my question for you is, if this is the game plan by Israel to finish Hamas right to the last terrorist, what is left after that? They talk about the day after the war. What does it look like? Who runs Gaza? Where do these people go back to live? In other words, what actually happens if Israel is successful, however long it takes, in eliminating Hamas?
Well, first of all, I just have to add, you quite rightly said it, Piers, that the figures you gave are Hamas figures, and we do have to treat them with more than a grain of salt. As for, again, my counterpart here goes on about the deliberate genocide of children and women. I mean, I know, and this is the sort of thing I think you do. You sort of claim that there are bombs being deliberately dropped on children and old women. Why would Israel want to drop bombs deliberately on children or old women? I mean, it's just a shame you don't get out and see anything. The Israelis do an incredibly careful campaign before bombings to try to make sure that civilians are warned to leave areas that are about to be attacked. Everybody knows that. Everybody in the region knows that. It's a shame that that fact hasn't got to you. As it happens, the whole question you raised, Piers, is a very, very complex one. I don't have the answer, and I don't believe anyone does have the answer about the day after. Nobody wants to rule the Gaza. The Israelis used to be in charge of it. They left, as I say, in 2005 to the last Jew. They were all taken out of their houses. Israel doesn't want to rule the Gaza. Now, who can rule the Gaza? Hamas clearly cannot, because they set it up as a terrorist statelet. Can some Fatah-like authority be encouraged to take it over? Possibly. Possibly. I spoke to one Palestinian analyst earlier today who said that actually, just as I said earlier, that an election in the West Bank today would elect Hamas, perhaps an election tomorrow, if it was to happen, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a good idea, might even actually elect not Hamas Palestinians to power. But it's a heck of a risk. The reality is that the only solution to Gaza that anyone can see, I can imagine, is that it has to be a solution which involves multiple players in the region. The question of the Gaza is a very complex question. It used to be ruled by Egypt, used to be run by Egypt. Can Egypt have a role? In my view, it has to have a role. Can Jordan be involved? In my view, yes, it has to have a role. Can the Gulf states, including those who've been pumping money to Hamas, have some kind of role? Yes, I would hope so. It cannot be Israel's task alone to deal with the question of the Gaza. It has to involve multiple players in the region, but there's one kicker to that, which is that none of the Arabs in this region that I'm sitting in care a jot about the Palestinians. They really do not. If they did, for all of their talk, they would have done something. They would not have decided to keep the Palestinians out, as they have in country after country. Queen Rania can invite the Gazans into Jordan. She can invite the West Bank Palestinians into Jordan. She doesn't. Egypt could open its border with Gaza. It doesn't. The Egyptian border with Gaza is firmer and more closely locked than the Israeli ones. There are Gazan workers who, until the atrocities of October the 7th, every day were going through the Eretz crossings and others to work in Israel and to earn a decent living. Were there workers going in daily into Egypt? No. because the Egyptians don't want Palestinians in their country. So the only solution is a regional one, but I'm afraid in this region there are very few people who care about the Palestinians.
Okay, Douglas, you had the first word. Cenk, I'll give you the last one. I want to preface it by saying that it's been reported today, and this is coming from Hamas's statements apparently, picked up by newspapers in America, that there was a new hostage deal offered, which was that Hamas were asked, will you release the 40 women and children you still have captive in return for a week-long ceasefire, and they apparently have rejected that. So I think that when we talk about behaviour on both sides, the mere fact that there are still 40 women and children in the clutches of Hamas, and God knows what they're doing to those poor women, that should be noted too. There are still innocent people being held in the most appalling conditions by Hamas, and that is also motivating Israel's response.
Right.
But